So today I just wanted to come on and film one of my most requested videos, and that is just an overview of LSAT prep. And I wanted to come on and film this video because I know there's a lot going on with the LSAT right now, with the Flex LSAT and then the May LSAT and the April LSAT and the March LSAT getting all jumbled up because of the pandemic. So I wanted to just give you some tips. These tips will really help you get ready for the LSAT and make the best of that study time. So the very first tip I have for you is you want to start with at least one diagnostic test. This is crucial. This will help you know where you are as far as LSAT prep goes. You might luck out and be one of those people who gets a 179 the very first time. It just comes naturally to you. Good luck, you are one of the chosen few. Most people though will not be that lucky, and they will need to have that diagnostic to sort of see, okay, where are their natural tendencies? What do they tend to struggle with? And then also gauge what kind of study that they should plan to do. So this was told to me, and I think it's a very helpful guideline to go by when you're deciding how to study and what kind of materials to use. If you are scoring below a 160 and you know that you want to go to a top 14 school, I would recommend that you sign up for a prep class. That means that you will be going to a physical location a couple times a week, and you will have an instructor there who will teach you the LSAT. I'm speaking from experience because when I was studying for the LSAT, I started with a tutor, and it just was a waste of time and money because I strongly believe that tutors are best for people who just have a couple of things here and there that they have to tweak to get to their target score, and for people who already sort of know exactly what they need to work on. They have a good handle on the test as a whole, and they just have some small areas to improve. But if you're like most people, going into the LSAT, you have no idea what you need to work on. You have no idea what your strengths and weaknesses are. So the benefit of taking a prep course for most people is that it's going to give you a survey, like a completely comprehensive overview of what the LSAT is all about, the basics of the LSAT, and most people really do need that, especially if you are a first generation professional and just don't really know much about the test at all. So I recommend prep courses. They are very good, most bang for your buck. And the thing about a prep course though is you want to make sure that you're following up with that homework. Do that homework, do that outside work, make sure that you're sticking to the diagnostic schedule, don't skip those. Really make sure that you're prioritizing LSAT prep because it is the single most important part of your application. It is more important than your GPA, it is more important than your college major, it is more important than where you went to school. The LSAT is the single most important part of your law school app. Once you've figured out what you're going to do as far as LSAT prep, you want to make a schedule that's realistic and you want to stick to it. If you are working while you're taking the LSAT, I recommend taking out at least a few months for LSAT. So if you're aiming for a high score, you're aiming for top 14 law schools, you're scoring below or around 160 on your diagnostic test, and you're working full time, I would say carve out 6 months to prep for the LSAT. That will allow you to do so in a way that's relaxed as possible, gradual, and also you won't feel rushed. You'll have time to work on other aspects of your application, and it'll just give you that time to get used to the test. Now, if you are someone who has the luxury of not having to work while you study for the LSAT, I would say 3 months should be pretty much enough, so long as you treat it like a full-time job. That means waking up in the morning, going to the library, studying the LSAT, coming home at 5, or going to your LSAT course in the evening. So you want to take it that seriously. Some people will not need all that time, but I think that's a safe bet for most people who are scoring in the average range on their diagnostic and are aiming for a top 14 school. You want to make sure that you take regular diagnostic exams. And the trick with this is to make sure that you save the most recent LSAT prep tests for closer to your actual LSAT exam, and then prep with the older materials early on in your LSAT prep. And diagnostics help you track your progress as you are studying for the LSAT. So when you take a diagnostic, you want actual realistic test conditions. Sit in a quiet room, have a timer, stick to that timer, no distractions, don't cheat, and really allow yourself to test where you are as far as your prep goes. And this will help identify different patterns as far as what you tend to do better on, where you tend to struggle a little bit, and that will ultimately shape your prep. So I would say take a diagnostic test at least every month while you are preparing for the LSAT. If you do this consistently, you will also notice trends with your LSAT. I would say take a diagnostic test every couple weeks at least while you're prepping for the LSAT. And this will also help you notice trends over time with the exam. So the test evolves and there are patterns that you can identify for each section. So if you're looking at logic games, you can see the type of games that they've offered through the years. If you're looking at reading comprehension or logical reasoning, even though those sections don't tend to evolve as drastically as the logic game section, it'll help you identify the patterns of questions that they ask, as well as how they ask these questions, and that will just help you cut down on time more and more as you practice the test. The test is all about repetition, it's all about practice, and it's all about getting comfortable with the time constraint. And the best way to get comfortable with that time constraint is to make the test taking almost habitual. It should feel natural. You should be able to look at a question and have an idea what they're asking for, and that's when you know that you've really done the work to prep for this exam. You can find prep tests online. I know they have some free tests on the LSAT website, which is the organization that administers the test. You can also get prep tests on Amazon. I think they're like $10 a pop. And they also have booklets that have several prep tests in them. So you want to save those materials and make sure that you have them on hand so that you can do your diagnostics. When you practice, when you are studying, you want to get as close to real test conditions as possible. The LSAT is not something that you sit down and turn on the TV and come and say you're studying for. It's not something that you study for in bed. It's not something that you study for on the couch. You want to sit at a table, take it seriously, block the time out, and really maximize the time, because otherwise you'll get to the end of the 3-month or 6-month period and find that you've wasted all this time. You haven't made a lot of leeway. Make sure that when you are studying, you take the time to review your diagnostics. This is so important, but commonly overlooked. When you get a diagnostic back, go through the questions that you missed. Go through the questions that you got right too, to reinforce that in your mind so that you get those questions right again. Work through the problems that you didn't understand. Ask questions of your instructor. Look online. There are a bunch of great resources online for you as well. And just take that time to understand what your patterns and habits are so that you can actively target and troubleshoot as needed as you are preparing for your test. As you've been practicing, as you've been studying, as you're taking diagnostics, you will start to see patterns as far as what kind of questions you tend to get right and what kind of questions you tend to get wrong. And so when you see these patterns, it feels so frustrating. For me, it was could be true questions. For some reason, those used to trip me up a bunch. And so what I did is I took a bunch of those question types and I just drilled them. That's what you need to do. So just do 30 in a row, 20 in a row of those question types, drill those question types, and really understand why you're getting those wrong and try to troubleshoot that early. You don't want to go into the test with that kind of handicap. The same thing goes for logic games. Every section has a category of question that is asked. So if you find that a certain kind of game is tripping you up, drill those games. Logic games is one of the sections that will really benefit you with drilling, because when it comes down to the test, each section is 35 minutes. They have varying numbers of questions per section, but the fact of the matter is with logic games, you will get 4 games. And for 35 minutes, if you break that down, that's roughly 8 minutes a game if the LSAT was not very difficult, but it is. So every game is not going to be 8 minutes, and that's where the tricky part of the section comes in. And the best way to prepare for the logic game section is to drill to the point where you can predict what kind of game you are dealing with very early on and how much time you should spend on that game. So some games are going to be 15 minutes, and that means that you have 20 minutes left for the rest of the games. You need to know that so that when you come up against a 15-minute game, you allot that time. On the flip side, some games are only meant to take you 5 minutes. So if you come to a 5-minute game and you spend 15 minutes in it, you've lost 10 minutes from your bank, and that's going to impact how you do on the rest of the section. And that's what makes this section tricky for people. So get used to identifying what kind of game it is. 7 Sage is amazing for logic games. He goes through and he does the game for you, and he tells you this is a 7-minute game, this is a 6-minute game, this is a 5-minute game, this is a 13-minute game. And then you know, like, okay, this is my goal as far as how quickly I need to get this done. And you can use that to sort of check how you did on the game section yourself. 7 Sage was my like go-to tool for LSAT. They have the videos on YouTube. They also have a website where you can sign up for additional videos for pay. I did that. I am a huge advocate of 7 Sage. If you struggle with the logic game section, use that service. And the biggest thing with the LSAT is if you're not using extra time, if you don't qualify, you need to get comfortable with that time constraint. You need to get comfortable with the rush, because that's what the test is. It is just a very rushed exam, and the people who do well on it find ways to get comfortable with it and cope with it. So if you're finding that you're slow on reading comprehension, for example, drill that section. It's the same kind of thing with the logic games. Drill it to the point where it's like, it feels almost automatic. You understand what they want you to do. You understand what the questions are asking for, and intuitively you're going through it. The only hard part there is then dealing with the new information that you have. So make sure that you get comfortable with what makes the LSAT difficult, what makes the LSAT unique, and really learn the test. Besides just practicing, those who do well on it are those who really understand the exam. So now I'm just gonna list some really beneficial material that I thought was very helpful with my LSAT prep, and also my peers found very helpful. The first one I've already touched on, that's 7 Sage. You wanna make sure that you sign up for that. I don't remember it being very expensive as far as how much the paid service was, but there are a lot of games that he's just uploaded on YouTube. So if you need that service, you can Google the games by test number and section. That's very helpful. I recommend getting the Logic Games Bible. That is a very helpful book as well, along with the Blueprint Logic Games book. I found that to be extremely helpful. And the LSAT Trainer by Mike Kim. I used the 2015 edition. Found that to be very helpful as just sort of a different perspective on the LSAT that gives a different dimension than like your traditional power score material. So I would say invest in pencils, invest in pens. I found it helpful to color code my games. So I knew sort of, okay, red games, this is that category, green games, that category, etc. Some colored pens never hurt. A clock, a watch. When I took the LSAT, you were only permitted to have an analog watch with a turn thing to keep time. You couldn't have an Apple Watch or a stopwatch or anything like that. So get that watch and practice with it. I will link the watch that I used below with all the information that I'm providing. There's also a really interesting podcast by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you've heard of his podcast called Revisionist History. I love it. It's such a great podcast, and he did 2 episodes on the LSAT and law school in general. That is really interesting, and I recommend anyone who is interested in law school to give it a listen, because it'll sort of illuminate a lot of things that you might not know about the law school application process, the LSAT, and law school in general. And it's also just a really great listen and a great podcast. So I recommend that for you guys. I will follow this video up with more information. I just didn't want to throw too much at you guys. So I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more law school content and lifestyle videos, as well as information on how to just deal with your 20s and get through it and be successful, but also be happy and a whole healthy person. So I do videos on that topic regularly. Follow for it and sign up for notifications so that you don't miss future uploads. Like this video if you enjoyed, and share it with any friends who are applying to law school. I'm sure they'll find it really helpful. Hit me up on Instagram if you have certain requests or follow-up questions. I'm on Instagram every day. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.